and welcome to this seminar. This is Class Size Realities, Evidence, Practice and Pathways for Learning at Scale. We know that this is a topic that's very important. Our own data from the Global Education Policy Dashboard shows us some very large class sizes. And of course, this raises questions about how and whether the smart buys in education can work in such contexts. So we're delighted to bring together today a group of colleagues who have been thinking and studying and working with large classes for quite some time. So I'd like to move on and introduce Dr. Brenda Wawire. She is a literacy and language specialist at the Learning Systems Institute at Florida State University, where she's a research faculty member with research focusing on strengthening language and literacy skills among multilingual learners from linguistically diverse communities, with a particular emphasis on structured pedagogical approaches, language of instruction, and teacher education in low and middle income countries, and more than 12 years of experience conducting research across Kenya, Malawi, and Rwanda. So welcome, Brenda. You've actually worked directly yourself in classrooms in Kenya, Malawi, and Rwanda. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, if you could share with us, what do teachers actually do when they're standing in front of 80 or 100 or even 200, as you've seen their children? And how is that differing from the training programs that they have had, what they've prepared them for? Over to you, Brahman. No, sorry, Brenda. Two B's.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Laura, for inviting me to be part of this forum. Yeah, from my experience working with teachers in Kenya, Malawi, and Rwanda, teachers, when they get to the front of the classrooms, of course, they put in their best effort to teach, and their goal is to accommodate and reach as many learners as possible. I taught in high school in Kenya, and two of the classes that I taught, one of them had 94 students, another one had 75 students, and there are multiple classes that I taught, but the smallest I taught had 75 students in that class. Yeah, so just thinking about what do teachers do when they get to when they're in front of the class, and I also share my highlights and drawing from the analysis, the in-depth analysis of classroom instructional behaviors that we did from the data that Adrian has just shared in Malawi. Yeah, so some of the common practices that we observe, and I allude to this from my teaching experience and working with teachers in different contexts, and also just from the in-depth analysis of the teacher behavior or instructional behaviors in classrooms. Yeah, so there is dominance of teacher-centered pedagogy, where the teacher works mostly or delivers instruction with the whole class, and this is partly due to the hierarchical top-down power structures within many African cultures, and where the teacher is perceived to be the more knowledgeable peer, passing on knowledge or instruction to learners, and therefore just adopting the banking model. However, more and more when we interact and engage with teachers now, they are turning towards implementing learner-centered pedagogy. But how does that look like or play in overcrowded classrooms? It's interpreted from the lens of just active engagement during the learning process. And some of the other dominant patterns that we see, and teachers tend to perceive this as learner-centered instruction, is the dominance of discourse patterns that are very lively. So there's the tendency to use a call and response during instruction. So the engagement or interactions throughout the lessons are very lively, where the teacher initiating a call and learners actively responding in chorus form, and sometimes is giving or using a predetermined answer, or they can have open answers, however, but it's very controlled. Teach amazing is another common discourse pattern, where teachers would give a phrase and then leave a section of the phrase open so that learners can fill in. And what we see here is just, again, one word, very short responses. Prompting is another very common technique that teachers use extensively. So they rely extensively on questions, and questions are used for different purposes to gauge, to evaluate the learner's understanding of content, or to gauge their knowledge on a specific topic that that they want to cover. So, but there is again reliance on low-level questions. Matters in many contexts. There is the move or shift to the competency-based curriculum that emphasizes the need to build critical thinking, use high-order thinking skills, high-order questions during instruction. However, some teachers attempt to ask high-order questions, but with limited scaffolding or expanding of student responses. Therefore, the effort gets lost just as the pedagogy, as teachers try to implement pedagogy without, not doing it adequately. There is quite a bit of use of group work, mixed ability groups where teachers work with. They've identified learners, the different ability of learners within their classrooms, the high achieving or fast learners versus slow learners. So teachers tend to mix learners with different abilities so that peers assist others. However, this approach tends to increase, it increases learner participation. However, sometimes learners can be tasked to support other learners, yet they don't have the skill sets to be able to do that adequately. And therefore, you see, just from our video analysis, there are patterns where the group of participation was very uneven, with the fast learners dominating group activities, while the other learners are just following and watching. Group leaders are also a useful resource within classrooms, where teachers work with they select a few leaders within the classroom to support not only classroom management, but also to support distributing materials such as textbooks to demonstrate concepts to others. However, the only caveat is if there is tendency or over-reliance on these group leaders, again, it creates very different dynamics within the classrooms that the whole school system has to be cognizant to think of addressing it. Assessment has been mentioned. Assessments, some teachers use group assessments. However, those are not very welcome or appreciated by all learners, just because learners do not sometimes trust their peers to grade their work. They want, they're confident when they're confident and value the assessment to be done by the teacher. Marking is also a very common practice in many classrooms. And as Adrian mentioned, a lot of time is devoted to marking. And it's because of just competing priorities. There are a lot of expectations around grading from different stakeholders. It's the school administration, the Ministry of Education, parents. So teachers have to try to meet the expectations of these different stakeholders. However, realistically, it's really challenging and limiting, because they sometimes tend to prioritize marking and record keeping over instruction. So learners are the ones that are missing out, or sometimes the use of very watered down assessments just because they need to get everything on paper, to everything documented properly. So I'll shift a bit to so that's what teachers do when they're in the classrooms. How does this differ from what the teacher training colleges prepares, or how the teacher training colleges prepare them? We did a review, a content analysis of the Malawi initial primary teacher education curriculum, just to look at how are teachers within this context prepared to teach in large classes. We also talked to teacher educators and student teachers, within the context of Malawi. They all indicate that specific knowledge and skills for handling large classes is not adequately covered in the initial primary teacher education curriculum. And they highlight that just a content analysis of the curriculum shows that they're just very general tips provided within the curriculum, such as, it's important to create a small classroom environment, use group work, teachers can move around, make efforts to provide students with feedback. And then, the whole content within the entire curricula, the modules for the content for teaching on large classes, just in one chapter and maybe just a few pages. So it's not in-depth enough to help teachers or teachers to acquire the critical skill sets that they need. Yeah, so for example, one activity that student teachers are provided, are tasked during their training is choose a topic and discuss how you can teach in large classes, develop a lesson plan, peer teach the topic, evaluate the lesson with reference to language inclusion, suggest how the lesson can be improved. So we see student teachers are asked or tasked to generate their own knowledge and skills about effective teaching without being taught how to do it. It's not explicitly taught. Yeah, and there is no comprehensive or systematic training that helps to prepare student teachers to adapt instructional strategies and practices for different large classes. Or even just think about the teachers are working in very resource limited contexts. How can they be prepared to be able to capacity build them with knowledge and skills to be able to work in classrooms that reflect their realities? Teacher educators acknowledge that some of the methods that and strategies that they teach student teachers are not contextualized for realities of large and overcrowded classrooms in their own context. So they are aware we are teaching them, but when it comes to practical implementation, this is going to be very challenging. Yeah, so just talking to those stakeholders, we see, there are challenges that are interconnected, and Adrian mentioned them: lack of materials, pressure, space constraints, lack of diversity, addressing the needs of diverse learners, let alone those with disabilities, and teachers and student teachers and teacher educators indicating the critical aspects that need to be addressed within the systems. It could be providing them access to learning materials. They would like to see stronger policies and frameworks in place to provide them with resources like structured guides so that they can use them that they can use to guide instruction in these overcrowded classrooms. They're dealing with learners with diverse academic abilities, and remediation is a key component that could help learners with different abilities to be accommodated. So again, a structure, because differentiating instruction is critical in the larger class, and even when they work with learners in smaller groups, if the systems can be able to accommodate that. Yeah, teachers need capacity building on how to differentiate instruction. They need capacity building on best practices for establishing and implementing classroom routines. Assessment, how can they, again, instead of just marking and checking boxes and recording, keeping the appropriate records, how can assessments be used to inform instruction? So teachers would need capacity building on that. So what the teachers and student teachers are echoing, indicating as critical needs, is aligns with what government and other research from perspectives from researchers. Governments are aware of classroom constraints, and they are putting measures in place to improve the quality of instruction in many of these contexts. Through deployment of teachers, providing resources for schools, creating the shift options, school shifting options that Brian mentioned. Yeah, so they're making efforts, and research shows, just from what we've explored so far, there is need to really capacity build teachers with evidence-based practices to improve the quality of classroom processes holistically in this setting. And training can focus on specific aspects, strengthening, just the core skills of teaching so that teachers are able to support as many learners as possible.
Great. Thank you, Brenda. I think what I'm hearing from you is that these teachers are aware of the importance of things like learner participation and assessment and feedback, but it's not always, the way they try to handle it because of the class size. It's not always going to work. So that's really helpful to hear from your perspective, what you've seen and where the teacher training is falling short. I'm wondering, just in one or two minutes, if there's anything you'd like to say specifically on literacy practices. Before you do, though, for any of our other speakers, panelists, if you see any question, want to respond, please do, because we may run out of a little bit of time. But I think some of the questions I've seen will be coming up and discussed by a couple of the later panelists. So, Brenda, back to you. Anything just in 1 or 2 minutes you want to raise in terms of the specific literacy practices?
Thanks, Laura. So from my experience, again, working with teachers in Kenya and even observing teachers in Malawi, the use of structured pedagogy, I think, is has a potential for thriving in large classes. However, teachers will just need to be supported in areas where they're struggling. So teachers are able to implement elements of the structured pedagogy, some elements. So let's say the gradual release of responsibility model. They're able to implement some aspects of the instruction process adequately. However, instruction breaks down at some point, and of course, it's partly due to just them trying to juggle and manage supporting different learners, or it's them not preparing adequately or knowing the sequence. So let's say I use this. This is my target letter sound, for example. I model to learners, and then when they move to the next stage of we do, introduce a new example, and then have students practice using a different, practice on their own using a different illustration. There was a tendency where teachers just use the same words over and over, so learners just get bored and they disengage and start getting distracted. However, if teachers plan and think through well, I think that can help improve instruction. Again, vocabulary knowledge, for example, teachers started by asking learners, what's the meaning of this? What is the meaning of this word? Instead of just, using again the same framework, tell them the word and then show them an example in a sentence, and then get learners to use activities, pair work, group work to get them to practice some of the new words. There was a lot of tendency, choral reading within the lesson. And again, there are models that they use that could help build fluency. Apart from choral reading, partner reading, teachers got to learners to work in small pairs. Again, just reinforcing that modeling reading fluency for them would be ideal. Repeated readings, there's some strategies that they would use to improve reading fluency. However, there is need to really pay attention to students who might need extra support, because teachers just tend to move, and differentiation is a big struggle. So teachers just tend to move with students that are doing well. And so just if they can be better supported to provide targeted assistance to learners who might need more support, I think that can help improve the quality of the instruction in foundational classes.
Great. Okay, so literacy really important there, but it's the same issue across foundational learning on differentiation. Thank you so much, Brenda. That's really useful.